sometimes we get too hung up on the majors or the minors that we do in an IIM or whichever MBA college we go to.
Right.
End of day, it is general management.
Children who grow up in families running their own businesses probably find this move easier. But to come from a family working a job, the mindset is very different.
When I joined, I said, okay, so start teaching me how to make beer. He said, yeah, that's not that simple. You start with picking up the plates.
Okay.
So for the first about 2 weeks, I was doing the job of a waiter. And that too, not serving food. I was picking up used plates and used glasses. I got a call from the Honorable Minister himself saying that, Pratekk, that policy you were talking about has been published. You go to the website called nic.gazette.in. You check out the gazette, take it to the Excise Department of Delhi and get your policy done.
Wow.
So that is the kind of responsiveness, that is the kinds of ease of doing business which has come around in India.
Hi friends, welcome to another podcast by Stud Farmer. Today I have with me Dr. Pratekk Chturvedi. Welcome Pratekk.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time out today to speak with us. Hopefully today's podcast is going to be about your career moves. You've had a fantastic, very unique career route that you've taken. You've been in an industry which is, not very commonly attractive to people who do MBA from top B schools.
Yeah.
Why don't we start with your B school days, your IIM Calcutta days? It was fun to see you being a placement representative at IIM Calcutta. But the one thing I want to start with is you majored in strategy and finance at IIM Calcutta.
Yeah.
How come you end up with a job with Procter & Gamble, which is practically a sales and marketing job? How did that job materialize and what was your thinking behind taking that job up?
See, I think sometimes we get too hung up on the majors or the minors that we do in an IIM or whichever MBA college we go to.
Right.
End of day, it is general management. And that was something P&G was very clear about, that they wanted generalists. They really did not want any specialists.
Okay.
Now, when you look at the job which I got, as in the first KRA which I received when I joined P&G,
right,
we were looking at a brand turnaround.
Okay.
There was a brand which had been bought out from a company called Poirot. It was herbal essences.
Okay.
Most ladies out there would know the brand because it has beautiful perfume and it lasts a long time in the hair.
Okay.
So that brand was not doing very well. And the question that had to be addressed was, what is it that it will take to get this brand into a success story again?
Right.
So it was basically more of a relaunch.
Okay.
So we went in, did a lot of market research. When I say we, the team of herbal essences, and the business was relaunched. And over a period of those 3 years, that went from 0.1% to almost 4.5%, became a $660 million brand.
Okay.
And that became a success template, which a global company like P&G, they then start replicating the template globally.
I see.
So it became a very interesting case study there. And the strategy and the finance which we had learned basically came into handy out here. Otherwise, what happens in a typical job or a typical organization, you become more specialized.
Right.
You end up getting into either core finance or core accounting or core sales. But when you end up having this kind of a brand responsibility,
right,
you understand overall strategy, you understand overall marketing, and you understand overall P&L, EBITDA, finance.
I see.
All those elements also.
All of those elements play a role.
So it's a very well-rounded experience, so to say.
Okay.
And if I may so say, this is the kind of experience which ends up spoiling you and giving you the confidence, spoiling in a good way, and giving you the confidence that you can run your own business.
I see.
And sitting in P&G Singapore, me and my colleague back then, Suketu, we used to sit around and talk a lot about coming back to India, doing something interesting. And one of the hangouts where we started talking a lot was a place called Brewerkz.
Okay.
In a place called Clarke, Singapore.
Yeah.
This was a microbrewery. And sitting in this microbrewery, a lot of evenings were spent talking about what to go back and do in India.
Okay.
An interesting tidbit here again, the gentleman who owns the microbrewery, Devin Kimball, was an ex-iBanker.
Okay.
He used to work with Merrill Lynch in Hong Kong and then one day decided to make beer and he moved to Singapore.
I see.
And his brewmaster was an ex-NASA radio astrophysicist, PhD in radio astrophysics.
Wow.
And that guy decided to make beer.
Okay.
This is just a background on Brewerkz. So that got me interested.
Okay.
Started spending a little time with Devin, asking him about what this business about and all that. And he basically said, enough desis come and ask me these random questions. If you're so serious about it, why don't you quit your job and come join me? I'll teach you.
Okay.
Because I'm sure he was sick and tired of maybe every alternate day somebody walking up to him and saying, how do you do this, how do you do that? And back then, and even today, I guess, we were a little heady. So I said, yeah, fine. And the next day, I signed my resignation in PNG. And I said, you know what, I'm out. I don't want to work here anymore. Was it a good decision or bad? That only life will tell. And I went and joined Devon.
But PC, the thing is, PNG is not an organization you leave at the drop of a hat. Right? At least all the people I know, all our batchmates, your batchmates, all of them who've joined PNG from campus have probably stuck around with PNG all this while. To be leaving a PNG job, I mean, what prompted you? It's not, is your family an entrepreneurial family? Do you come from a business family?
No, exactly not. In fact, I come from a very humble beginning. My father was an army officer. In fact, my father is a Vir Chakra from 71 war.
Wow.
He fell with 14 bullet wounds, spent 2 years in a hospital. This was in a place called Jasor near Bangladesh border. Spent 2 years in the hospital, but in 73 came out on his own 2 feet and received the Vir Chakra from the then Honorable President V.V. Giri Sahab.
Wow.
So he was one of the most respected soldiers in the country. There was no event, defense based or otherwise, where he was not allowed, not invited as a very respected guest. In fact, when Bangladesh celebrated their 25th year of independence, along with the Indian contingent, my father was one of the VIPs called. And there were multiple articles about him in Bangladeshi newspapers about their contribution and the fact that they are Azad because of the Indian army.
So those are big shoes to fill.
Yes.
Plus, you don't have a. You see, why I asked if you come from a business family or not is because children who grow up in families running their own businesses probably find this move easier. But to come from a family with, being a professional or working a job, that kind of a background, the mindset is very different. So I mean, I'm just trying to understand. The push had to be really strong for you to leave PNG.
So quick background here, and then I'll answer your question if I'll take this tangent. That I am a national level shooter from 94, 95 or so. And I was very keen to join the army. Then there was a shooting accident. I got hurt badly. And that's when my dad, because of his background, said, your signs are not looking good. If you join the army, you'll bloody die. Because you've not even joined the army, you already got hit by a bullet already. So he said, go into civil. So I was very keen to join the army. And I guess when somebody, so army is not a job, it's a passion. It's a lifestyle. And what the army does give you is discipline and courage, right? And the aggression needed to probably look at anything and say, why not? This can be done. So one of the interesting things we say in the army is that you can take a kid out of the army. How will you take the army out of the kid?
Yes.
So that still remained inside. Now coming back to the question you are asking, to take this kind of a step, and I'll take a step back and say PNG is a fantastic organization. They keep you so happy that you probably will not like to leave. And usually people who leave end up leaving only because of meritocracy, nothing else. Otherwise, usually people who join end up retiring from there, let's say. PNG never ever recruits laterally. Those who join at the beginning are the ones who go on to retirement.
CXOs.
There is never really lateral movement at all. It's a fantastic organization. But that's where the foolhardiness comes in. And as my father also used to very nicely say to me, that I am one of those naively optimistic people. To take the step that I took, you need two things. Either you need to have extremely heavy guts, or you need to be an idiot. It is only an idiot who does not know what can and cannot be done, who ends up saying, yeah, let's do it, and probably ends up doing it. Now the challenge here was that leaving PNG was, okay, I had to give my notice period and come out, that's fine. The bubble was about to break, which I did not know. So I come from an army background, we were living inside the cantonment, so on and so forth. Then we did my engineering, hostel, then did my MBA from IIM Calcutta, and then ended up in Singapore, which is an extremely professional place. And then for whatever reason, the bug that bit me was to enter the alcohol bev industry, specifically beer in this case. So I did my stint at my Brewerkz in Singapore and landed up in India.
How long were you with Brewerkz?
About 5 months or so, approximately. Started with, so it was not that simple. When I joined, he said, I said, okay, so start teaching me how to make beer. He said, yeah, that's not that simple. You start with picking up the plates.
Okay.
So for the first about 2 weeks, I was doing the job of a waiter, and that too not serving food. I was picking up used plates and used glasses and taking them back to the houser in the kitchen for cleaning.
How do you do that to have a premium MBA and be? My goodness, I can't imagine.
Like I said, either you have to be very brave or very stupid, one of the two. Yeah. So started doing that. Then about 2-3 weeks into it, he said, okay, then you can start serving the guests.
Okay.
Because a microbrewery is an overall service experience.
Okay.
It is not just the beer, it's also the alcohol, it's also the music, it's also the ambience, it's also the service, it's also the food. So he said, okay, now you start serving food to these people.
Right.
Then about 1.5 months in, he said, okay, now you start attending some of the management meetings inside.
Okay.
Where the restaurant manager or the general manager, etc., would sit down.
Okay.
So everything that I just told you, that he was an iBanker, the brewmaster was an astrophysicist. Over a period of those 6 months, I got to know those guys one-to-one and started figuring these things out. Yeah. So I learned all this over a period of about 5 months.
Okay.
And then took a flight back to India, landed in Pune, and landed up with the excise office after that in Mumbai, saying that I would like to do a microbrewery in India. How do I apply? And the folks at excise department basically looked at me and they said, what is a microbrewery? And that was the first shock wave which comes in.
Yeah.
And it was also a cultural shock, because till now, like I said, it had been hostels, it had been Singapore, and now you suddenly land up in the middle of India. And that too in the middle of the most regulated industry of India,
Right.
which is alcohol.
Right.
And now you're not talking about just getting a license. You're talking about the creation of a policy.
Right.
Because such a framework did not really
exist in India at all.
Yeah?
Yes.
So started going to the excise office, and that's where your background comes in. That being an engineer come MBA from an IIM and being an ex-NRI, doors open.
Okay.
What you do after opening those doors, are you able to make sense of the opportunity presented to you, is completely up to you.
So essentially you're spearheading the policy for, the entire microbrewery market in India.
Exactly.
So were you doing this alone, or did you have company? Did you have a partner?
So we had set up a company, and my colleague at that time was my same batch, IIM Bangalore graduate, Suketu.
Okay.
We were the two who wanted to do this.
Suketu's background was?
He was IIM Bangalore.
Working with?
Working with PNG.
Oh, okay.
So he and me used to work
colleagues.
with PNG together,
Okay.
hang out together, drink beer together, and decided to leave together. So that kind of sometimes helps, having somebody else who's also taking the same leap of
Absolutely.
faith. So ended up meeting the excise commissioner and excise minister, thanks to a little bit of the background and making sense to them. I'll get to why making sense to them later. And they basically said, guys, we don't know what this is, but if you tell us, we will introduce this for you.
Okay.
So now was the time to take a flight back to Singapore.
Okay.
Sit down with the customs and excise department there, take out their framework, the Potha, study it, make a presentation, come back to Maharashtra and say, here's what we want you to do.
Wow.
Now this process took about 10 months from initiation to the proposal to them coming out with such a policy. And it was not just coming out, it went all the way to the cabinet.
Right.
So we were setting up the microbrewery in parallel. The policy went all the way to cabinet. The group of ministers visited the microbrewery. They figured out that this is something interesting. And for the first time in the history of India, there was a conversation that they want the youngsters to move away from hard liquor towards milder forms like wine and beer.
I see.
And hence a microbrewery should be encouraged. And this was the formation of India's first such microbrewery license.
Right.
This was followed by a photocopy of it, because if I may, I am the guy who gave copies to everybody. This was followed by the formation of such a policy in Haryana.
Okay.
And one microbrewery opened in Gurgaon. It was followed by a copy in Karnataka.
Okay.
They ended up with the beer club and toit and everything. Punjab, Chandigarh, so on and so forth. But every microbreweries that you see today, starting from the first one, which was Dolali in Pune, set up by yours truly, to around, I think, 500 odd outlets today, and microbreweries as well as craft beers.
Right.
So when you talk about craft, anything which has been made with the pure raw materials, no mixing with the right ingredients is craft.
Okay.
So anything craft basically initiates there. And that is probably the reason that I ended up being called the pioneer of beer. And later when I ended up setting up a company called Ministry of Beer, most people ended up referring to me as the Minister of Beer.
Yeah.
It became an interesting prelim.
Yeah.
But that's where it was.
I guess that sounds like the name of this podcast also.
The Minister of Beer?
Minister of Beer, absolutely.
Okay, happy to. But this was the beginning of, so getting the license was an interesting chapter.
Yeah.
But then comes a twist in the tale. And it also tells you the kind of information gathering facilities that the big majors have.
Okay.
And the first call I got as I was stepping out of the excise office was from the office of Vijay Mallya, who says, "Hey Pratekk, I heard you got the microbrewery license. I have wanted to do this since 71.
Okay.
Come to Bangalore, sit with us. We would like to partner with you."
Wow.
And you say, wow, this is a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
I am being given this kind of a launch pad to work with.
Yes.
And so they took the next bus out. Did not really have money back then. Came to Bangalore. Brigade Road pe, they had this office on Brigade Road, on Vittal Mallya Road.
Yeah.
And ended up meeting people like Kalyan Ganguly Saab, who was the president of UB Beer Division, Shekhar Ramamurthy, CMO, etc. Spent 7 months there.
Okay.
Kind of like interns or whatever. Lots of business plans were made and developed. And at the end of those 7 months, basically, the gentleman basically said, it's not a workable model, it's not really adding up. But you are well educated, why don't you join us? And we'll make you good offers and you figure out the craft thing in the years to come. There's no hurry.
Okay.
And could have been a cushy decision again to take.
Yeah.
But that's where it clicked and we said, if they are giving me a job and are kind of trying to hold this back, maybe we are on to something. So walked out from there.
I see. So you did not look at it the way they possibly wanted you to.
They projected it as an opportunity. I saw it as
something
if you look
that
at it game theory point of view, you say, well, I think they don't want us to do it for some reason. So let's go and do it.
And in their scale of thing, I think it's probably the scale with which you can ramp this thing up. They're not really in the experience business. So that's the other thing, no?
No, but from a big industrial brewer point of view, craft is a challenge.
Okay.
Because what is happening is you're about to go out and challenge what typical product has been so far for years and years, maybe even centuries. So you take any beer, be it Budweiser or Carlsberg or Heineken or Foster's or Kingfisher or London Pilsner, they're all the same yellow liquid called the Pilsner Lager.
Okay.
And here comes somebody else who says, you know what, there can be 10, 12 different kinds of beer. There are the ales, there are the stout, there are the porters, there are the lambics, there are the lagers, and there are multiple variants of the same.
I see.
There are the India Pale Ales, for example. And if you see what has happened since 2008, when the brewery first opened, Dulali, there has been a growth of craft beer in India.
Okay.
It was followed by people like Bira, White Rhino, Twite, Geist, Buho, Brewdog later on. So it opened up another market. And that is something that somebody who's guarding the locust, the status quo has not really wanted to happen.
Understood.
So you end up creating a new market completely and kind of challenging the norms so far.
So what prompted you to do this PhD? You were not Dr. PC, in your PNG days or even Dulali days. Yeah. But was it this work that you did with the policymakers, getting this policy in place? Tell us something a little about your doctorate.
If I may, I have spent a lot of time in government offices. Over the last 17, 18 years I've spent in the industry. One of the wrong impressions I had was that government servants are not really helpful. Okay. In fact, I went on to meet one of the commissioners back then and I asked him most respectively that, sir, we had heard horror stories about you guys. We had heard horror stories about the corruption and the lack of cooperation, etc., etc. But I have had a pleasurable experience. In fact, if anything, you guys have gone out of your way to help us out. So he said basically that the typical kind of people who come from the alcohol industry are usually a little rustic, are usually a little rough.
Okay.
Now, if two educated people come down and sit down in front of us, make a logical argument and want us to do something which is for the benefit of the youngsters or the next generation or the market for that matter, end of day, what I am doing is adding collection to the exchequer.
Right.
Be it from the license fees or the excise or the VAT or the GST point of view. So not only it is good for the generation, it is good for the exchequer.
I see.
And that ends up making sense. Why wouldn't I want to help you out?
I see.
So this was one.
Okay.
Second was working with the government of Maharashtra, later with government of Delhi, also government of India, because India was, Delhi was both a state subject and a central subject.
Right.
So I ended up spending a lot of time observing a lot of things, what is happening in the market. And then I started thinking, why is it that the policy seems to be working well in certain regions and not so well in other regions?
I see.
So I'll take a step back here and say, I just told you that we were the first breweries in India.
Yep.
Where do you think the first policy of India was? Microbrewery policy. Logical answer, Maharashtra.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the fact is that the first policy in India was not Maharashtra.
Okay.
In 2008. Actually, it was 2001 Kerala.
Wow.
Yeah. And that tells you the correlation between the ease of working of the policy versus the effectiveness of the policy or businessman or entrepreneur picking up the policy.
So
now, even
despite the policy being in place in Kerala,
nobody has set up a microbrewery.
And you did not think of going to Kerala?
In the last 23 years. I did not even know. It was later in 2014-15 that it emerged that such a policy already exists in Kerala. It has existed for about 14 years back then, in 2014-15.
Okay.
So that's when I started studying this and ended up writing something which was basically about the correlation between government policy and ease of business, with specific emphasis on alcohol policy.
Wow.
And that's how this PhD came around. So it was more based on my experiences than any in-depth research, so to say, but it is a very interesting factor.
So essentially you put a few years of your life into that PhD thesis and you got your doctorate.
Exactly. And if you take the Delhi example also, in Delhi the microbrewery policy had come out in 2010.
Okay.
But when I landed up in Delhi to set up Ministry of Beer, which was my second stint, the policy had not been notified yet.
Okay.
So the GO had not been. Now what happened here was I landed up in Delhi, raised money from various investors, put up the brewery and applied for a license.
Okay.
It was when I applied for the license that they said, yeah, but the policy has not been notified. And I was like, okay, so how is this supposed to work? The policy exists on your website. It is there for people to see. And you're saying it's not being notified and hence you cannot go about it. They say, yeah, that's the way it is. So here you are. Now what you need to do is go get this notified. And that's when my journey in Delhi began. That I had to go down to excise office, understand that this is a pollution control board and environment ministry job.
Okay.
Go to them. They said, okay, we will do this, but then we need another permission from Delhi Development Authority. I went to DDA. DDA said, that's good, but you have to also go to Government of India because this is a union subject. And so once they put up the file, they sent it to Ministry of Urban Development, Government of India. And then I was chasing the Government of India to get this notified. So the Delhi policy, in fact, took about 3.5 years to get formulated, just from being notified to becoming ordered and becoming applicable to Delhi.
Wow.
So ended up spending a lot of time with officers, with various parts of the government and learning a lot about this.
I think any new microbrewery opening should have your photograph in the middle of the...
They really shouldn't, because unlike most other entrepreneurs, when I talk to people, instead of talking to them about the glamour or the sexiness of this kind of a business or any kind of entrepreneurship, I would rather focus on the pitfalls or the difficulties.
Right.
In fact, the fact is that most success stories are glorified.
Okay.
We hear about people who are successful, who end up becoming unicorns or something, or end up raising money.
Absolutely.
How many times do we hear about the failures?
Yeah.
Right? If I may, I look at myself as a history of failures. I started one company, dropped out of it, started another company, dropped out of it, then joined another company, so on and so forth. There are a lot of learnings there.
Absolutely.
Which are more about what not to do.
Which is hopefully, so not just success. You see, at Stud Farmer, I like to see you as a leader, and not just in terms of how much financial success you've seen, but also in terms of pioneering something. So there was no route at all, right? It was just a jungle, and you had to cut your way through the bushes and the trees and get this kind of thing sorted. So I think this kind of leadership you may not always find. I'm sure if somebody else were to start now a microbrewery unicorn, who do they have to thank for that? I'm sure
the groundwork has already been laid.
Exactly.
To give a very bad example, it's like Tenzing Norway going up Mount Everest.
Yeah.
He went up without support, but as he went up, he started putting those ropes all the way. And it makes it easier for the next guy.
Absolutely.
I'll not say next generation, the next guy to come in.
Yes.
And maybe build it off from there.
Yes.
And if anything, I would say any entrepreneur who wants to enter the craft beer industry now, or even craft alcohol, has already got some kind of a framework to work off.
Right.
When we came in, we were firing in the dark.
Nothing.
We absolutely had no idea.
Yeah. So you're out of pocket, you're spending, going to Singapore, getting, those documents out, sharing them here.
And ran out of money for that matter.
And ran out of money to having to take a bus from Pune to Bangalore to meet with you.
Yeah, and honestly, the guys I would like to thank are my colleagues from IIM Calcutta also. My wingies for that matter. I have lived out of the living rooms and drawing rooms of so many guys. They were the guys who used to lend me pocket money. I mean, honestly, we have seen that. Most people who pass out of an IIM expect some kind of a very comfortable, secure life, salary, etc.
Right.
I have seen the other extreme, where I was actually dependent, and I am thankful today to all those colleagues, all those friends who gave me a little bit of a loan at some time or the other, gave me some money, kept me in their drawing rooms, fed me thrice a day, so on and so forth, right? Even to go to Pune, I needed $700. I did not really have that kind of money.
Wow.
Yeah. But the other thing which happens, if I may add another tangent to this, you end up getting a lot of time. And the question is, what do you want to do with your time? Yeah. Now, I'll take many steps back to about 2001 when I had just given the cat. And that was the time I had touched religion for the first time.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had given cat, I had come back, I was not so sure what is about to happen.
Okay.
And my Guruji, I went to him and I said, I have not done well. I probably have done so many questions, I'm not sure what's about to happen. And he looks at me and says, Kali has called you. You will go to Calcutta. Now, me being as young as I was, I still wanted to bargain with God. I was like, no, I don't want to go to Calcutta. I want to go here and there. He said, no, Kali has called you. You will go to Calcutta. Now, you'll pardon me, but I'm taking a little bit of a detour. And what happened was I got one call from IIM Calcutta. And not to sound full of myself, but I would know of many people who get multiple calls.
Right.
But in my case, I got
just one call and you converted
it. I landed up in Calcutta.
Yeah.
And by her grace, since the time I have been in Calcutta, and today we are sitting in 2024, I have gone to Calcutta every year.
Okay.
I have visited Ma Kali Ghat and Dakshineshwar.
Okay.
And when possible, Kamakhya and Guwahati also. And I come back. Because I always say the journey wasn't easy. There was somebody who was leading the way, showing me the path. It was her. What have I done?
Found spirituality also very early.
And then when there were these waiting periods that you go and apply for a file, you have nothing else to do but to wait for another 8 days for somebody to sign the file next, so on and so forth.
Right.
Now, what do you do during this free time?
Okay.
The choice is yours. Either you can sit around, do nothing, or you can watch YouTube videos the whole day, or you can get depressed, or you start reading. So now, back then, when I was going through these doldrums, I was looking for advice, and at that time, one of the advice most people go for is astrology, saying, why am I going through this? What's happening? And I couldn't really find the right guidance. And back then I said, you know what, I want to read this myself. So I started studying astrology.
Okay.
And I started studying Tantra.
Okay.
And I started studying Jyotish. And what has happened is, by God's grace, over the last 12 years, I have become a really good, reasonably good astrologer also.
I see.
I don't do it on a commercial basis, but given somebody's time, place, date of birth, I can possibly give a reasonably accurate outcome of what to do, what not to do, etc.
Okay.
So, if anything, the time I have spent during the waiting periods, I ended up educating myself and learning something new. So I ended up doing the PhD in government policy at the same time, but I have not done a PhD yet, but I am working towards it.
Okay.
I am going to probably in the next couple of years do a PhD in astrology also.
Wow.
And gives me another angle to make something of this life.
I don't think there's anything else after that left for you to do, man.
Yeah, I guess it fulfills you both materially and philosophically. Earth, as they say, Earth is also being done and Adhyatma is also being done in parallel. And I guess there's only so much to be done in this life now.
Not bad.
So learning a little more every passing day.
Not bad. So what happened at Dulali, and what is the story behind you starting Ministry of Beer? Ministry of Beer is a big popular brand. What happened there? So
Dulali was India's first microbrewery, first of all. And Dulali was the tip of the hat to the English, who basically brought beer for the first time to India.
Okay.
So Dulali comes from a place called Devlali, which is near Nasik.
Oh yes.
And
they have a big Air Force station also.
Yes. And an artillery center also.
I've stayed there for quite some time.
And so when the Brits were in India, the guys who had completed their tour of duty were sent back to Nasik, or Devlali in this case,
to
wait for the next ship to come and go back home.
I see.
And they had nothing to do in the Indian heat but to get drunk and have fun.
I see.
So this getting drunk, getting completely mad,
It used to be
basically
called getting Dulali.
Ah. So that's how Dulali came up.
Oh, wow.
And
Fantastic story.
That's the story of Dulali.
Yeah.
So Dulali started, and then about 2012 or so, the growth was not really going anywhere. I wasn't sure where we are going, and I was a little bit of a growth animal. I am somebody who's a bit of a workaholic. I can't sit still. I like to keep moving.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what, guys, you carry on doing what you're doing. Allow me an independent state myself, and let's see what I do.
I see.
And for some reason, the word Ministry of Beer had been stuck in my brain since 2005 or 6. Started with Ministry of Sound, obviously, in Singapore. I said, Ministry of Beer I want to do. So I ended up coming to Delhi, started working on Ministry of Beer, ran out of money for that matter.
Okay.
I'm talking about 2016. In April, we had started. And by June or so, we had run out of money. Because working in Connaught Place in Delhi was turning out to be more difficult than we had actually anticipated.
Okay.
And of course, this was compounded by the demonetization which happened in November of 2016.
Yeah.
But went through all those hurdles, and in about March of 2017, we opened Ministry of Beer.
Okay.
Only as a pub and bar, without the microbrewery.
Okay.
The microbrewery license though came in, I remember February of 2019. That's when the brewery license came. To take the brewery license, we needed money, which none of us had. And I was foolhardy enough to go and mortgage my own house, in which my parents were living in Lucknow. And they were kind enough to let me go ahead and do it. I mortgaged that house, raised the money, paid the excise fees, and started what was Delhi's first microbrewery.
Wow.
Unfortunately, though, then on 23rd March 2020, COVID hit us all. And of course, F&B was the first to get hit.
Yes.
We had already grown Ministry of Beer from Delhi to Gurgaon, Patiala, Bhatinda, Bhubaneswar. And suddenly overnight, everything was shut. And in fact, I was stuck with paying EMIs for a loan which I had taken for this business, which had now completely got stuck.
Wow.
Yeah. Sit. Yeah. And that's how it is. But then, as they say, sometimes a window closes and a door opens. Back then, Brewdog wanted to enter India.
Right.
And they had been already trying to set up the business in India for about 1.5 years or so.
Right.
And I bumped into them. We ended up liking each other. Got myself a role there. And that's where I have been for the last 3.5 years.
Wow.
And Brewdog, for that matter, is the largest craft beer company in the world as of today.
Okay.
They are both in the bars business and retail business.
Okay.
And I'm happy to be spearheading the business in India.
Wow.
I'm the CEO. Of course, there is the CEO who's leading the job.
Right.
But I work very closely with him and the global team. And it's been an interesting run here too.
So why don't we do a count? How many microbreweries have you opened so far in India? Start with Dulali.
About 24.
Wow.
So a few of my own and quite a few on an advisory or helping basis.
Okay.
In fact, other than microbreweries, I've done a brewery also. In 2014-15, I had a stint and I got myself an interesting job profile where I was working for a brewery company, setting up a brewery in Ethiopia.
Oh, yeah. The Africa stint. Yes.
Yes. So spent some time in Addis Ababa. It was, arguably Africa's biggest brewery back then.
Okay.
And I was there for about 10 odd months as a part of the setup. And around the time when the brewery was starting, Heineken guys took it over.
Okay.
And we, being from the consulting side, came back to India.
So did that also require you to work on the policy side?
Not really. So if you look at the larger scale breweries, there are quite a few, and the policy for that has been centuries old.
Okay.
So there are enough and more breweries for that matter, be it Africa, be it India. In fact, taking a step back, in India, the first brewery was set up by Mr. Dyer, who was the brother of General Dyer. So the brewery that you see in Solan, that was set up by the brother of General Dyer. It was taken over by the Markin guys when the British left India and went back from here.
Okay.
And the first beer they made there was the India Pale Ale.
India Pale Ale. Okay.
So the beer which used to come from England to India used to get spoiled on the way.
I see.
So what they figured out was if they add more hops, which adds the bitterness and the aroma to the beer, it would survive the long journey here.
Okay.
And thus was born the India Pale Ale IPA, which is what Brewdog is also famous for. In fact, almost 80% of the Brewdog portfolio of 400 beers is IPAs. And in India also, even Kingfisher used to make IPAs till 1963.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was afterward that they realized that it is cheaper to make London Pilsner. It is simpler.
Okay.
It appeals to a broader this thing.
I see.
That overall in India Pale Ale stopped, and this London Pilsner, the Pilsner lager basically took over and became a majoritarian beer.
I see.
But today what we see is what we call the Ghar Vapsi of IPA.
IPA, okay.
A lot of craft brewers, including Brewdog, are working on IPAs, and a lot of young drinkers have an interest in what IPAs are all about, and there's a lot of interest in this product too.
I see.
So here's bringing back or re-emergence of a historical product, something which is India's, we didn't even know, and is making a comeback for itself.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So we've talked quite a bit about your career and this and that. We met after quite some time.
Yeah.
And why don't we talk a little about this Hercule Poirot moustache you're carrying?
Well,
what's the story there? How much of an effort is this? Yeah.
It is actually. So if you remember me from the college days, I was clean shaven completely.
Yes.
I have been clean shaven till as recently as 2020-21. But we come from our lineage is from the royal family of Rewa.
Okay.
Rewa was an independent state till independence, 1947, princely state, and became a part of the Indian Union.
Okay.
Taking a few more steps back, about 700 years ago or so, my great forefathers were a part of the small little group which set up the state of Rewa.
Okay.
So there were two brothers. One brother became the king of Rewa, that is the ruler, and the second brother, it became the lineage that he would be the prime minister come Raj Purohit of Rewa.
I see.
And so my full name would be Thakur Pratekk Chturvedi. Now Chaturvedi in today's world, again, what happens is when you are born to a Chaturvedi, you become a Chaturvedi. But back then you had to study the 4 Vedas.
I see.
So that's why you get either a Chaturvedi or a Trivedi or a Dvivedi or a Vedi, depending on how many Veds you've done.
Okay.
So about 4 generations ago, my forefather studied the Vedas and became a Chaturvedi. That's how this is coming.
I see.
Why I'm telling you all this, basically we come from Rewa, which is a part of Chambal. It is also the only place in the world where you find white tigers.
Okay.
Yeah. All white tigers in captive today are children of that tiger called Mohan, who was found in 1940s by the Brit in Rewa. So I come from that lineage, and keeping this moustache is a part of a family legacy.
I see.
And around the time, so my father had this moustache for all his life, and around 2020 or so, I would say a couple of years before he passed, I decided to take this legacy myself.
Okay.
And I have been keeping it. It is quite an effort to maintain. Usually at least 3 to 4 times a day you have to give it the love and the care. In the night you have to give it the oil and the serum and all that. But honestly, it does give you a bit of a, what's the right word, distinguished mark, kinds of, it's something which is noticeable, as I just saw that you too noticed.
No, it's so noticeable. You're almost the Ministry of Moustache also.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you. Yeah.
So, your current role with Brewdog, where do you think the craft beer industry or the microbrewery industry is headed? So while we can see the numbers growing up left, right and center, we are in Delhi NCR, already Gurgaon is full of microbreweries. Where do you think this industry is headed in the medium to long term? So I'm sure for Brewdog to enter India, they have seen something in the Indian market. So
if I was to stop at saying India has 1.5 billion people and roughly 100 million LDAs joining the army. LDA means legal drinking age.
Okay.
Individual joining our age in the couple of years
population
coming up. That would be the short story. If you look at the American story, till about 1971-72, they were only big brewers. There were no craft brewers.
Okay.
In about 73 or so, a guy called Pete Mitchell, the same name as the guy from Top Gun, Maverick. So Pete Mitchell set up what was America's first microbrewery.
Okay.
And that slowly started growing. In 80s and 90s, there were exponential growth rate.
Okay.
Today in the US, there are about 3,700 microbreweries, but they still contribute less than 1% of the overall beer market.
Really?
Yeah. Coming back to India, India has got about 450 or so microbreweries and craft players today.
Okay.
I would Suffice to say that it does not even contribute 0.01% of the total
On a per capita
volume
basis, I'm sure this is,
it's nothing.
India's population.
It's nothing.
Yeah.
But what is happening is that there is a merge of the craft brew towards larger brews.
Okay.
So when I say industrial brew, I do not mean it in a negative way at all.
Okay.
What is happening is that the craft players who are getting popularity in the market are slowly ramping up their scale to be able to cater to a larger volume of people, to a larger mass.
I see.
So that is where a player like Hogarden gets absorbed by AB InBev and becomes available to a larger player.
Understood.
Somebody like a Bira raises money and is available to more people.
These are the brands you're naming, they're all craft beers.
They're all craft players.
Okay.
Somebody like a Brewdog, who is the world's largest craft beer player today, comes to India and says, this is the growth market we want to be in.
I see.
And so Brewdog is present in more than 30 countries. It's a £6.5 billion company. It's bigger than Carlsberg for that matter.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
And we are here in India slowly taking the growth story forward.
You were the first Brewdog employee in India?
No, I wasn't. I was actually the fourth
one of the first few.
I was one of the first few.
How big is Brewdog these days?
Well, we started out as, when I joined, we were net 3 people.
Right.
Today we are about 430 something. If I am to...
I think where I'm getting to is Brewdog does look at India as a massive market.
Absolutely.
Lots
of
potential.
A lot of potential, a lot of growth coming. And Brewdog is not just craft beer, it's also craft spirits.
Right.
So there is the Brewdog gin, Brewdog rum and Brewdog vodka. All of these are doing very well abroad.
Okay.
And there is very much every reason to bring it to India, which is what we are doing.
Understood.
And the craft alcohol market in India is booming for that matter. If you look at gin, there are players like Hapusa and Greater Than.
Okay.
If you look at vodka, there are enough and more players like Paul John, etc. If you look at rum, there are enough craft players in India. In fact, Indian single malts are slowly becoming bigger than...
oh yes. There's a lot of talk about these Indian single malts winning this prize and that prize. Yeah.
And they are getting recognition globally.
That's right.
On the kind of work they're doing.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I think while COVID kind of, killed the Ministry of Beer stint for you and, you had to take a step back, the mortgage and all, playing so heavily out. And I think it's the story so many entrepreneurs live, the story that you've lived. How do you reconcile yourself to being, I'm sure being in a leadership role, it definitely helps, but how do you reconcile yourself from being a full-blown entrepreneur to now being a corporate entrepreneur? I believe...
I guess the workings are the same. An entrepreneur or a corporate entrepreneur, the workings are the same. You are setting up something from a scratch and building something big out of it. You are ending up generating a lot of wealth and employment.
Right.
But
not as much for yourself, right? Which is probably one thing that
which is
would weigh
fine.
on...
So, I think doing it for yourself is one of the factors that an entrepreneur has in mind. But I think the larger factor is are you getting interesting work that you're doing? Right? There is a point beyond which money doesn't matter.
Sure.
Yeah, doing it for yourself can probably get you better results.
Sure.
But end of day, I think you know the theory of diminishing returns. So beyond a particular point, the amount of money you can make for yourself or as a company doesn't really matter.
Absolutely.
What matters is, are you having an interesting conversation? Are you having an interesting life? Are you living it the way you want it to? Are you having the right work-life balance? Right? Even those things start propping up. Right? Am I able to get enough time with my family? Am I able to fulfill myself in every way? Am I able to study astrology as much as I want to? Right. All those things matter. And what also matters is what you learn over this long journey. If I was to, it has been an interesting experience to just see how India is changing for that matter. Now, as an entrepreneur, if I may say so, I have been on the front row of seeing ease of doing business, changing from what it used to be, say, 16 years ago to what it is today. An example here would be, let's say back in 2007-2008 when we had just started Dulali, even the lowest ranks, and I don't mean it in any bad way, but it was very difficult to approach the officers back then, let alone ministers, so on and so forth. And it used to take a lot of time and traction, and there was no accountability or reply coming back to you. So this was back in 2007-2008.
Right.
Then you talk about the current government, and I give you the example of 2018 or so, when I was working between Delhi government and and government of India.
Right.
And the policy needed to go to the MOUD government of India.
Okay.
And I remember that I wrote an email to the Honorable Minister of Development back then, Hardeep Puri Saab, if I may take the name, in the morning at 9:30. And I got a call from their office at 10 o'clock saying the minister is available for 3 minutes at 3:35. Is 3 minutes enough for you? And can you come down? I said, yeah, 3 minutes is enough for me. I go down there. I meet the Honorable Minister and he says, okay, tell me what you want. I tell him this. He says, call the Delhi division guys.
Okay.
The Delhi division guys come in. He asks them, okay, what's to be done? They say, sir, this has to be done. He says, good, do it. Prateek, you come back in 1 week.
Okay.
You'll have a significant difference back then. In a week, I did not go. But I got a call from the minister's office saying, your job has reached here. And then I remember the date was February 19, which I just told you. I got a call from the Honorable Minister himself.
Wow.
Saying that, Prateek, that policy you were talking about has been published. You go to the website called nic.gazette.in. You check out the gazette, take it to the Excise Department of Delhi and get your policy done.
Wow.
So that is the kind of responsiveness, that is the kinds of ease of doing business which has come around in India. So you end up becoming a witness also in a way. If I was in any other corporate or any other organization, I am not sure if I would have been able to witness this change also.
Sure, first hand.
First hand.
Absolutely.
And that's what sometimes gives you more hope for entrepreneurs coming up in the days to come.
Yeah.
Things are a little easier. They're not going to be extremely easy, but they're a little easier than what we had to go through.
Brilliant story, man.
Yeah.
Really brilliant. I mean, you just read about these in the newspapers or, you hear some of the ministers talk about it and there's a tendency to take these things with a pinch of salt. But if, your story is anything to go by, the things truly are moving at the grassroots level.
Absolutely.
I believe the ministers also in the current government have started to feel that they are accountable.
Absolutely.
It's not just a cushy post that...
Which is what I meant by accountability and responsiveness.
Yeah.
They reply, they let you know what the status is.
Right.
And then they make it a point to tell you that this is where it has reached.
Wow.
It's fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Superb.
And it actually ends up giving a lot more encouragement to a lot more entrepreneurs who may want to do something.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, I believe, for all the budding entrepreneurs who are watching this, I'm sure they're going to be encouraged by your story.
Absolutely. Things are a lot easier. Unlike the past where you had to go through 17 different departments, now there's a single window system.
Right.
Where you apply, there is what is called the TAT, the turnaround time.
Right.
In which the department will either give you an answer.
Okay.
Or
their action,
or they'll tell you what is missing and what you need to do.
I see.
To get a reply.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
So it is a different world now.
A lot of hope for India.
Absolutely, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the next big opportunity, be it from an alcohol business point of view or every other business point of view. Yeah.
In hindsight, you spent so much time actually spearheading the policy creation.
Yeah.
In hindsight, was this the right business to enter?
Absolutely.
If you had known, because you told me that you probably did not know that a policy like this doesn't exist, yeah. But in hindsight, at the time when you jumped ships to become an entrepreneur, would you have entered this industry or would you have thought of something else?
See, I think if I knew of the hurdles coming up initially, I may have chickened out. Who knows? That's the honest answer. But I was. And my colleagues back then were foolhardy enough to say, you know what, I think this can be done.
Just let's push through.
So, I came to know about the hurdles after I had jumped into the ocean, so to say, on the deep end.
Yeah.
And there was no choice but to swim through it then, right? And it did take a lot of time. It did take a lot of effort, a lot of heartbreaks. But it turned out okay. Yeah.
I think those heartbreaks are what keep you going. I mean, to have founded these two fantastic brands and to exit both of them, one to probably one in the hope of probably doing something big on your own, the other you have no control over circumstances, COVID lockdowns and the kind of disappointment, man.
Absolutely. But other than the money, the reason for an entrepreneur to do certain things is recognition, right? And when you walk into any typical craft alcohol convention or a craft beer or a craft gin vodka convention, where people walk up to you and say that you are the pioneer who started this or you are the father of craft beer or the minister of beer, as you very correctly said. There is literally, if I may sound full of myself, probably no convention in India where I would not be called if it involves craft beer or beer, etc. So the respect which I have earned in amongst my colleagues, amongst my industry counterparts, I think that is something which gives you the most satisfaction. Right? Money comes and goes, but the fact that people respect you and they love you, that is more important.
See, I think what stands out about you is you could push your way through a route that has not been created, or just an imagined route, and you could create it. Would you think any other industry would be the beneficiary of PC taking the lead again? You know, maybe I'm just throwing out a random idea. You're still young, you still have that energy, you still talk about starting with your astrology, or doing a PhD, a second PhD in astrology. So you still have that fire. I mean, I just want to know if
so there are a couple of things I'm toying around with right now. One is that even though a lot of people are getting into craft alcohol, if you go backwards, the raw material for alcohol is malt. And there isn't much which has been done in the malt industry so far. So there is a huge opportunity there. And because malt is taking grains and roasting them and basically agricultural, it's quite non-sexy. So nobody wants to do it. So that's something I'm playing with. B, the learnings I have, having worked with governance and government, is something which can easily be applied to larger beer or alcohol players also.
Absolutely.
So there are discussions ongoing where the larger players are looking at setting, working with the government to rationalize certain things. For example, the excise duties in India are slightly irrational. There is a lot of room for making them better and more efficient, like it is in other countries across the world. Unfortunately, because alcohol is a taboo subject, it is very difficult to touch. But if somebody was to logically and rationally approach it, changes can be made. So I think that the learnings I have so far could be reapplied in a larger scale also. So that is one interesting thing. And on a side, what I keep playing with right now, I am thinking of setting up my own website. I am going to start consulting people from an astrological angle. And that's something I am working on. And last but not the least, since I told you my father was a 71 war Vir Chakra, so the government gave him about 20 acres of land in a place called Kundor in Madhya Pradesh. Which was a bit of a hamlet, nothing much to say in 1973. But in 91, what happened was the government marked out certain areas and declared it to be a tiger reserve. And they caught tigers from Bandhavgarh and Ranthambore and everywhere, Jim Corbett, and left them there. So where I live now, it is maybe 5 minutes away from the Sanjay Gandhi Tiger National Park, where there are about 62 tigers. So I am building a small little farmhouse there, and I am slowly thinking of a semi-retirement zone where I want to go and spend some time there every quarter or so, do a little bit of farming, watch the tigers and the elephants come by through the land. So I'm kind of working on that too.
I see.
And I think such a surrounding is excellent for doing something like astrology and Jyotish and all that also.
Understood. My last question,
please.
I know you don't want to, or you don't like to talk a lot about it, but you are a philanthropist also. What are the things you're doing? What prompted you to connect on that front?
Oh, you are about to get a very philosophical answer, which I am not sure if you want to.
Good. Let's end on a high note.
So taking a step back, my wife is also an engineer and MBA, and used to work in the corporate world, Lenovo, Microsoft, HP, etc. And then she got an offer from, in fact, she was my partner in Ministry of Beer also. So one of the reasons that entrepreneurship has turned out was to have a steadfast partner who says, you know what, I'm managing the house, you go out and do your thing. That kind of helps, of course. But taking a step back, when we were getting married, we both were fairly clear that we don't want to have kids by choice. Which was something very fortunate. I mean, if I had, so it makes easy for a life to be led there. The other thought that we had basically was that if you are two MBAs who are in a nice corporate job, you end up having 2 kids, so on and so forth, is the same old thing. And the amount of finance it will take for us to have a child and take him to, let's say, college and to finally having his own life. In that much money, 100 kids can probably be taken care of.
Wow.
So what we have done for that matter, we don't have any kids. I mean, we have kids. One is standing right here, there's another hiding back there.
Yeah.
We have kids. Yeah. But what we have done is we have gone ahead and sponsored a few kids, and we take care of their education and upkeep and everything. It is done anonymously, and nor am I going to talk much about it. It is done anonymously. The kids don't know who we are and what we do.
Okay.
But we keep track of what they are doing.
Okay.
We want to know if they are progressing, what's going on, what more can be done for them.
Okay.
So that is the kind of thing we are doing on this side. That's all.
Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful, man. Hey, Pratekk, it was awesome reconnecting and having this conversation.
Pleasure.
Guys, I hope you liked my conversation with the Minister of Beer, Mr. PC himself. Hopefully, I'll keep getting more and more such interesting people to talk to and give you their insights of what they've been doing in life, how they define success. I believe success cannot always be measured in financial terms, but there's so many other parameters that you can find and align yourself with in terms of defining your own success. Thank you so much for your time. I hope if our viewers, I'm sure they're going to like this conversation.
If I may, as you end, one small little word for the friends out there.
Oh yeah.
It's a small little quote which I read multiple times and I keep repeating to myself every day. That it has been my fortune to find at every turn of the road a friendly shoulder of the comrade kind to help me onward with my load. And though I have no goal to give, it's love alone that makes amends. My only prayer is while I live, Lord, make me worthy of my friends.
Wow.
So to all those friends who've been a part of this journey, who've supported me, who've helped me forward, thank you for helping me get here.
Super awesome, yeah. Super awesome. So great. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.